Okay, so again, our house rules: keep yourself muted for the whole duration of the speaker's presentation. You may unmute yourself during the Q&A session, and in case the speaker wants you or wants to interact with you, okay, there will be a Q&A session right after the presentation of our guest speaker. You may also use the chat box to type in your question, or the raise your hand icon if you want to ask a question personally. Okay, today we are fortunate to have our sixth distinguished speaker, okay, for the ADP Lecture Series 2. To start off today's session, the ADP Lecture Series, just to give you a background again, and also Ling Rong is a platform to expose students to real-world learning by engaging them to distinguish guest speakers' expertise through their design works, practices, philosophy, research interests, and advocacies. The lecture topics are aligned to the themes and focus of the studio. They likewise aid and inspire students in the development of their final design project.
Yeah, hi Sunny.
Okay. Okay, I would like everyone to give a warm welcome to Ling Rong, but before I pass the screen to him, okay, I would like to give a short introduction about our distinguished guest speaker for today, who is the sixth distinguished guest speaker, as I've mentioned. Dave, can you mute your microphone? I can hear you. Is it Dave? Okay. Okay, about our speaker, Ling Rong founded Attic Studio with a group of friends after graduating from Taylor's University in 2017. Their vision is to craft inspiring and meaningful works to captivate the audiences by constantly embracing new technology and digital skills. They have worked with numerous architects, property developers, agency, and alike in aspects of design, visualization and selling ideas. In the 3 years of his professional career, Ling Rong specialized in visualization, virtual reality, interactive 3D, and concept design. His lecture for today is on effective visual narrative and storytelling. From caveman drawings to great works of art, since the dawn of humankind, we have always been visual creatures. In this digital age, the new sets of tools and technology provide us with the ability to create powerful visuals with software and computers. In the context of architecture, there are unlimited ways to use visuals, such as drawings, 3D images, assist to form narratives and stories in the audience's mind, aiding architects in expressing their thoughts and ideas effectively. This sharing session intends to explore some of the principles and methods that Ling Rong uses to present an idea. Again, without further ado, let us give a warm welcome to our guest speaker, Ling Rong. Ling Rong, the screen is yours. Okay.
Oh, thanks. Thanks, Mr. Prince, for inviting me. I think I'll just be doing a little sharing of some of the basic methods and techniques that I use when doing visualization. So as Mr. Prince mentioned, I'm mainly doing rendering, so I'll be sharing mostly rendering works and how I do them. Okay. So as architects, we talk about dimensions of toilet always, or like scale of walkways and height of stairs but actually few people discuss how to put like elements or shapes, geometry together architecturally and present them nicely. So I mean, during school time for me, I think this is one of the most important process, because after spending all our time designing, I think we want our design to be presented in the best light or best way or best angle, so that our efforts will be worth it. So today I'll be doing a little sharing session, which I hope could be useful. It can be applied to everything. It's not just architectural presentation. It can be applied to any design related stuff. So I'll begin. First of all, I would like to explain that, I think generally design, it can be composited into 3D and 2D format. So I think those people who are generally, better at parking, they are able to design in 3D or think in 3D. So, but people who design from plan or 2D, composite through plans or 2D, they are able to, it's useful too because you are able to chart the circulation and scale of the space. But if you design in 3D, you add in the experience aspect in terms of architecture. But today, I'm not going to talk about 3D building design. I'm going to talk mostly about 3D rendering, which is what I do. Because since school time, I'm interested in rendering and I like rendering. So here are the principles, 3 principles that I would like to share about some of the principles that I use. So first off is composition. I'll move to composition. Okay. So regarding composition, composition is about putting different things together nicely, such as different geometry or different elements. But in terms of architecture, I think it's about catching the best angle for your building to present it in a render or in a perspective. And in composition, there are 3 things that are important that we can focus to make sense of the image, to make it look nice. So the first thing is focal element. Second is structure, which I'll go to later. And third is balance. So focal element is something that the viewer is drawn immediately when they look at something. It's the one main element of interest in your render or your perspective. So focal element is one of the most important things because if we look at something that is badly composed, it's usually because it doesn't have a focal element. So people will feel bored looking at it. For example, this image has no focal element, but if we just add something like a tree to it, it makes it slightly more interesting, or I would say it adds a small story to it. So this is how focal element affects our perspectives or our rendering. And then the next thing I will talk about is if you have too many focal elements, such as this image, it's actually images of building. You can actually confuse the viewers and they won't know what they are trying to look at, or they get confused, like what's the point of this image? So what we can do, like some of the techniques that we can use to highlight a focal element is such as color or contrast to bring out the key element in your render or in your perspective. So, but of course, they are not focal element. It can be building, it can be human subject or any activities. Or let's say if it's an interior, it can be an opening to outdoor view, or it can be just a light source like the sun or like artificial light. So here are some of the focal element influences that we can use to make our image looks better composited. First is guiding lines. So as you can see here, this image, the main focal element will be this, because the artist wants the user to bring their attention to the building and also like a grand welcome entrance. But in terms of guiding line as influencer, you can see the artist is playing with these lines to make sure that our eyes are drawn into the center point. And this is what I mean by guiding lines that is super useful, such as roads or like rivers act in renders. And then this is also another example of guiding lines. So as you can see, the roads they are all leading towards the circle at the center. These are all guiding lines towards the focal element in the center of the image. So this is another kind of influencer for focal element. And there's another technique called framing. So in architecture rendering, you can use framing techniques such as you use vignette or plants or shadows or depth of field act to make your focal element or your main object, your building, stands out. So one of the examples is something like this. You can see a lot of people, they will play with depth of field in photography so that they will bring your attention to the center or to the building. And as you can see, these are the blur part, and all these trees are actually framing this main element. So this is what the artist wants you to look at. This is how you can use framing to make it better. Let me save and page. Okay, this is another kind of framing that we can use. The artists use this kind of trees and all this foliage and also shadows at the front, the road at the front, to frame this building. So this is another method that we can use. And the next one. We can also use geometry such as window frame or building structure act to bring the attention to the things that you want to focus at, so that you can tell your story more clearly. Such as this bathroom. If you can see, the geometry are the walls and also the sink, but the sink also serves as a guiding line that points towards the basin. So these are like the guiding lines, then these are like the geometries. And also the artists use very bright background to contrast with this basin, bathtub as the focal element. So next one. And another one that you can use is contrast or colors. This is a very simple example to bring focus to your perspective for building. So the artists, they use a very bright spot that contrasts with the building, the silhouette of the building, so that user can focus on the building. And yeah, we finished about composition, focal element. Let's go to structure. So structure is basically the organization of element based on the rule. This rule, it applies to everything. I think it comes from nature because it seems like everyone is agreeing to all these rules that we heard about. So the rules that we heard about are like rule of thirds, golden ratio, pyramid, symmetry, repetition, depth, or like parallel to frame in terms of architecture. And as you can see, this frame, the artist, to bring the user's attention to the building, the artists use a rule of thirds, which is something like this. What they do is, rule of thirds meaning you have this sort of lines. If you use cameras, you can activate this sort of grid lines. And in the intersection point of each line, you can place your focal element or your subject, such as a building or human act, so that user's eye will be drawn to it and it looks more aesthetically pleasing. And in this scene also, the artist is also using like this road as a guiding line to guide your attention towards the building. So as you can see, everything comes together in terms of focal element and structures. The next one. For this scene, the artist also used rule of thirds. As you can see, the building is aligned, or you can put nearly at the intersection point of these grid lines so that it looks more aesthetically pleasing. And the next one is symmetry and repetition. So you can use a few different rules to apply in your renders or perspective to make it stands out more. So in this picture, it's very straightforward. If you divide it into two, it's symmetrical to each other. And the artists also use repetitive windows at the side to bring a certain feeling for this render. So it makes the building looks more, this whole perspective looks more structured and dynamic. And repetition is always often used in like government buildings or like building of authority because it has a powerful like effect and also it's calming. The next one, this is also the use of repetition and also symmetry. And this is also another form of symmetry. So in symmetry, it's different from rule of thirds because you place the subject in the middle. Usually you place the subject in the middle and your attention is going straight to the building or to your subject. Whereas in rule of thirds, you may use leading lines or any other framing effects to tell more story, such as people walking towards your building. You can play more with a rule of thirds. And another use case of symmetry and also depth, mid-ground, foreground, background. What I mean by mid-ground, foreground, background is so mid-ground is where you place your subject. In this case, it's all these human activities. And foreground is where you place not so important things, such as all these lampposts and roads, and all these small details that doesn't seem to be necessary, but it makes the whole scene looks more rich. And don't have to only use this, you can use anything such as furniture or plants like just now. So it's sort of same as framing. Your foreground can be your frame. Your midground can be your subject. And then your background is like, can be anything. So this artist, he also used guiding lines to guide your eye towards the subject. And also this fast moving train is also another subject in the midground. So when combine all these elements together, it forms a very pleasing image to look at and also tell a lot of stories. So you can see like people walking or going back home in evening. And if you compose like this, users will also feel that the whole scene is bigger too, because you are giving a lot of depth to the render instead of being flat. Let me find a flat render. Okay, this is sort of like a more flat render. So it means you can't see far beyond the horizon. But in this case, you can see far beyond the horizon and it makes your eyes stay in this render longer. Your eyes wanders more and looks more at the details, and you feel like you want to immerse yourself in this scene. And this is another use of rule of thirds combined together with this depth. So by depth, meaning this is the foreground, the river, and then the midground, the houses, and then the background, the sky. So the artists also use rule of thirds because if you draw a line and intersect them, the subject is like lying near to the intersection point. So it makes it look more pleasing too. And the artist is also using guiding lines such as this. It guides your eye towards this scene. So if you are going towards like an S-curve, your eye will stay longer in this image and will tell you more story about this whole scene. So this is the general use of structures or rules. And also, this is something important in architecture, I believe, because usually when human eyes, when we are standing on the ground and we look up, our perspective is usually something like on the left. So everything converges up because we are looking at the perspective. So in order to, if you want to, but in normal eye view, this looks normal because we are used to it. But in image, in render or in your perspective, if you want to make it look more aesthetically pleasing, you can actually straighten your building using two-point perspective to the frame of the camera so that the whole thing looks more pleasing or looks more dynamic. So this is the comparison between two-point perspective and also non-two-point perspective. And we have covered about structure, focal element, and now we go to balance. So for balance, the third thing about compositing a nice image is about balance. So balance is about making sure the visual weight of the image is balanced. So it means like not one side heavy. Another phenomenon that I think it applies, like sort of relate to this, is when you are tuning up the radio, we often go like by 2 or 5. So it means you don't want 7. So when you turn up your volume, when it's 7, you want to go into 8. Like you want to tune it to 8, at least for me, or for some of the people that I know. Or some people, they even go more extreme, like 5, then 10, 15. So they cannot tolerate like the number 7 or the number 9, odd numbers. So I believe this is something like innate in ourselves that we want to balance. For numbers, is we want it to be even. For visuals, we want it to be like it fill in the void, to fill in the void. So for this, right, this image, it looks slightly unbalanced because on the right is slightly empty and the left is the subject. So it's left heavy. So in order to make it balanced, like to tilt it, we can add something like maybe some small details such as just a mountainscape or like a human figure or a car to just balance this whole image so that it feels more right. I don't know how to describe it, but it just feels more right in terms of balance. So this is not something that we can learn immediately, but it's through like trial and errors, repetitive trial and error until it becomes like instinctive in terms of balance and structures, using of balance, structure, and also focal element. So that covers my part for composition, and I'll go to colors. Colors, it's very simple. There's an online tool that can help us when applying colors to our render, and it's the Adobe Color View. So if you can Google Color View Adobe, you can sort of click the options, and then let's say you pick one color, they'll help you pick the other complementary colors that fits the other part of the box. Let's say your building is red, so you pick red in your color view, and then by different color harmony rules that you want to use, let's say you want to use complementary color, if you pick red, you automatically choose the other side of the view. So means if you pick this red, it often gives you the color of this side, and then you can use this side for your maybe the other parts of your render. So this is for your subject, and maybe this is for your background. So the whole image looks more aesthetically pleasing. This is the color view. And colors, it can be, if you use Photoshop, it can be measured in hue, saturation, and value. So hue is very simple, straightforward. It's the type of color, and saturation is the intensity of color, and value, which is lightness in Photoshop, is the darkness or brightness of colors. And we often adjust this in Photoshop to get the best combination for colors. So because I think during foundation or when we are in semester 1 or 2, or when we start doing like architectural boards, we don't really learn about color harmonies. So because the color theory that we know is from kindergarten, so like age 4, we are taught about rainbow colors like red, blue, green, all these primary colors. So when we use this knowledge apply to our board, it doesn't look that good because it's not in line with the color harmony rule. So, and also another thing about color is if you are trying to go for photorealistic render, color can give off very easily whether it's a real or fake image. So one thing, if you want to make your renders look better, is to remove all the colors. So make it black and white, so it looks much more real. But colors can add a lot of flavors to your building, so I wouldn't suggest to do this. This is just an example of showing how colors can affect our perception of renders or perspective. So these are some of the basic color harmony theories that you can apply. The first one is monochromatic. So monochromatic means single color, but you use different saturation. Let's say you choose a red. So in your render, let's say you just want to be red. So you use different saturation and apply to different part of the scene, or in your board. So our architectural presentation board or your drawings. So if let's say you just choose red, you use different saturation and value and apply to your whole board. So it looks, you don't use like red and then combine with pink and purple. So it will look a bit odd because it doesn't fit with the color harmony rules. And then the second is most famous one, the complementary colors, which is always used in movies. So it means the colors in the opposite side of the view. I'll show some examples later. And the third is triadic. So I'll show these 3 examples, which is triadic is 3 colors at equal distance in the color view. And for example, this is a monochromatic render, blue hue. So the artist, he uses, you can see sort of like blue hue. This is like normal blue, and this is like light blue or bright, and then this is towards dark blue. So the artist never put anything like purple, let's say purple color, or like let's say pink color in the scene, because you break the whole image. So this is how you use color harmony and apply it in your renders. And this is sort of monochromatic or analogous color harmony rule. So analogous is colors that are beside each other. So green and blue is beside each other in the color wheel. So the artists, because the artists want to emphasize on the vegetation, so they use green, mostly green with different shades, as you can see. There are light green and dark greens. And also the sky is quite desaturated because the artists don't want the attention to be focused on the sky. The artist wants to tell the story about these farmers and also the vegetation that they are planting. So this is how the artists use monochromatic or analogous color scheme. And for this, the artist actually use just one single color, the red hue. And also the artist plays with this subject. This is the artist's focal element, which contrasts with the building, which can be another focal element, like a secondary focal element, but the main one is this. So when you look at this image, your main attention will be this, and then you'll be drawn to this. And then it tells the story about this this couple maybe enjoying this this scene or this outdoor scene. And the artist also use some framing, black. The artist just use black framing to frame this whole scene together, and one color. And the artist never use something like yellow shirt for the human or like blue shirt for the human, because it will also distract the whole scene. So this is monochromatic in applications. And the next one I want to show is a complementary, which is the most famous color combination. This is the orange and blue hue. You see in a lot of movies that are color graded. So this is the yellow, and these are the blues. And there are actually some of red because, and also some of the green, but it's just very minor because red is very near to orange, and also green is very near to blue. So you can use a little hint a bit everywhere in your renders to add more colors to your render. So the artist never use something like such as, if you go towards this pink, if you use something like pink, you put a pink human here, it will throw this whole image off. So these are some of the examples. And also this, mainly blue, orange, and cyan color to make this image looks aesthetically pleasing. You never want to use something like maybe bright green, super bright green as the subject, or else you would throw this image off balance. And then triadic. Triadic is actually, how to say? Oh, sorry. To add on to the previous slide, when we use complementary colors, we often want to use the stronger color as the key color or the subject color. So in this case, in terms of orange and blue, because orange is a warm color and blue is a cold color, so orange is usually more striking. For example, if you put orange and blue at roadside, we always pay attention to orange advertisements. So you want to use maybe like 20-80, or maybe like 30-70%. You never go 50-50, because 50-50 it will look odd. So you can never use like 50% orange and 50% blue. Your image will be, it will look okay, but you won't have like a key subject or key element to focus at. So in this case, the artist just used like maybe 10% of orange here, the most intense one. And then these are like more desaturated orange. This is 20%. Then all the remaining 70% is all blue. So this is how you bring attention just to your building. You never want to add suddenly a red sun here, or maybe like a purple moon here. You always want to just focus on one thing, one main focal element to make your render tell the story stronger. And move on. Triadic. Triadic is also very simple. It's just basically 3 sides of the wheel. So let's say if you choose orange, the opposing side will be green and blue. In this case, The artist used a very strong orange here, again as the key color, because this is the focal element, and then blue as the fill color. But the artist also throw in some greens, but desaturated ones, so that it doesn't take the attention away, and it's just like maybe 10% of this or 5% of this whole image. So when you want to use triadic colors, always make sure you use maybe like 20, then maybe 60, 20, 70, 10. So the third color will be just some hints of color to give the image to make the image more rich in colors. So this is how you use triadic. And for this example, it's different from this, because this one, the main color or the key color is this building, this neutral building. So this is white. In white color and black color is considered neutral color. So, but neutral color, because it's striking and it's so bright, so it contrasts really well with this green and blue. So if you can see, green and blue. And the third thing to apply is this small hint of orange, which the artist applies to all these dead leaves. So it adds more richness to the scene too. And the focal element doesn't have to be always like a strong color. It can be neutral color too, as long as it contrasts with the background. So in this case, the white contrasts with all these black trees and also all these tree stems. It acts as a framing for this main element. Okay. So to sum up, you want to use the weaker color, such as orange and blue. The weaker is blue predominantly, and then the stronger colors as key color in subjects. And then also another tip is don't overdo saturation. You only want to use it on focal element to make your image more contrast and stronger. And then you also want to use high contrast, such as this one, high contrast with the background to draw your attention to your building, and also use color harmonies for more pleasing combinations instead of combining weird colors, different colors that will break your render. You can learn about the color wheel in Adobe Color Wheel. Something that you can Google about Adobe Color Wheel and you can play around there. And you can apply it to anything, not just render. You can apply it to your board. You can apply it to posters, graphic design, or advertisements, just about anything. So we have covered composition, color, and then now I'll just talk a little bit about lighting, a brief one. So there are actually 3 lighting techniques that I use mostly, but actually there are different, like hundreds of different techniques, but these are the 3 main ones that I use the most. I'll just share a bit here. So 3-point light. 3-point light is always used in studio format. So when agencies or advertising agencies or photographers, they want to shoot a subject such as a human, they always use a key light. It's called 3-point because you have 3 light. The first one is your main light. Second one is the fill light. And then third one is the backlight. So the key light is to make sure all your subject's details are all shown. So this is like the focus element. And the fill light is to make sure that the right side is not that dark. I mean, these two can interchange. As long as your key light is within, let's say, around maybe 30 degrees to around 80 degrees from your camera. So let's say your camera is pointing towards the human. You want to, if you are using this technique, sorry, this is the camera. If you are using this technique, you always want to make sure your key light is just between here, so that you can show the depth of this subject more clearly. If you put it at the back, let's say over here, your light shines from here, you just see a black in front because it's the shadow at the front. And if you put it at the front, so let's say your light is from the back of the camera, the whole subject will be very flat. So let's say if you imagine a circle, 2 circles, I mean 2 spheres. If you put the light over this side, I mean at the 45-degree angle to around 80 degrees, you see some sort of like highlights and then like shadow over this side. But if you put the light just at the back of your camera, you see just a flat, bright circle. So you can imagine there's a lot of depth in this circle, and this circle looks very flat, which is what you don't want in when showcasing your building. So I just take this theory and apply it to buildings. Same thing, but instead of key light, I turn it to sunlight. This is the sunlight. So your sunlight always want to be around here or here. Never, I mean, at the back, you can go at the back too, but there's another technique. But never at the back of the camera, because you erase all the shadows. Because lighting is not just about light, it's about shadows too, to protrude, make your building look more protruding. And this is the sunlight. And then your brightest part of the sky, or I would say the whole sky, is the field light. So sky is often like blue. So the blue light will always illuminate on your building so that you can see the whole building. And also this feature light is optional. We don't need to talk about this because in buildings, exterior is always about just sunlight and sky. It's just the placement of your sun. So in this example, it's about three-point lighting system, or 2-point. So the sun is from here, around maybe, okay, let's say this is the building, this is the camera. The light should be around here. So when it's casting on this, it forms shadow on this side, and it gives a lot of depth to the render. And if you can observe, besides the sky, if you don't see the sky, this part is the brightest part, which coincides with the rule of thirds too. So the intersection points. So this is the brightest part, or the strong colors. The artist used red color to contrast with green because it's the opposite color wheel, and also some blue. So this is how the artist used lighting to bring this building alive. This is another example of key light tool. So let's say this is the building. This is the camera. When you do your render or perspective, you want to set your light around, okay, let me see. Oh, this is from top down, more of like top down. So the sky, it actually illuminates. If you can see this part here, it's more dark, but you can still see the details because it's illuminated by the sky. And this part are all illuminated by the sun on top. So this is another method of 3-point lighting. And the second method is implied lighting. Implied lighting means like you place an object or a tree or anything behind your camera or beside your camera. So implied lighting, how you use this is, let's say this is your building and this is your camera. So let's say your light is from here, shining towards this. If you want to make your scene looks more bigger and more rich, you can place maybe sort of like a tree here. So when you render, the tree casts a shadow at the front of the camera, which is this. So when you do this, the users will feel like, oh, this is actually much more bigger than in this image. They can imagine this scene is actually there's a tree behind, and it makes this whole scene looks more bigger. And also this shadow from the tree using this implied lighting technique can also be a frame. So it can be your frame to your focal element. So this is how the artist combine all this composition, colors, and lighting together to create this render. And of course, you can add humans and cars or your building activities as your subject to tell more story about your building. So it depends on your building. If your building is like a library, you add humans reading book. Your building is like a museum, you add some maybe old folks or what, like looking at the exhibition. So it can be anything, but as long as you use these principles, it will look okay. And this one is implied lighting plus 3-point lighting technique. So this is the building here. This is the camera. So the artist placed this tree here, which is around here, and the light around here. So when you do this, when the light shines on the building, you create a depth because this building casts shadows. You don't want to lit up the whole building. You want to have some shadows to make the building looks more 3D. And because the sun shines here, the shadow it falls over here, which is in front of here. So this is sort of like a foreground element or framing effect for this key subject. So lighting technique, 3-point lighting technique, and implied lighting used together. And the most easy to use one is the back or key light in frame, which is something like this. So this is very easy. Let's say if your building allows and your scene is bright enough, you can place your camera for your render perspective. Or in SketchUp, it's like a view. And after that, this is your building. And you can place the light source behind, around this area. Not directly behind, but just behind the building so that you can see the light. Imagine this is a light source that's casting on this whole building. So what this do is the light suddenly becomes the focal element instead of the building. When people look at the board from far away, this will draw their attention because the focal element is very strong. So it contrasts a lot with this dark building. But when they come nearer, they will actually, when they are attracted from far by this strong light, then they will read into the details of your building. So you can use guiding light lines or whatnot to bring your viewers' eyes around your building. So another technique, this technique can be applied for interiors too, because interior, you cannot use 3-point lighting system because there's no sun. So what you want to do is interior usually, let's say this is your interior scene, your building interior, this is your camera. You always want to use just one source of light. Because one source of light, it gives the sense of depth and also direction. If you use 2 lights, let's say you are looking at something subject here, your subject won't have shadow. What you want to do is you want to create some sort of shadow effect inside your building. So maybe this part is like bright, this part is like dark, so that your interior, there's depth to it too. It feels more 3D too, instead of being too bright. If you can imagine there's a light here too, let's say a big fluorescent light here and here, and it's like shining very bright, your eyes' attention will be drawn to this also. So let's say this light, right, is very bright, it's fighting with this. So you don't want two focal elements to fight. You just want one main focal element. And this is how the backlighting system works. And this is another example. This is very clear. The light is here, and it's like shining towards the whole building. And you can like add humans or whatnot, or activities of your building. And then after that, you want to cast shadows into the camera. So it makes the whole scene feels more real. Imagine if you add like a spotlight here and a spotlight here and a spotlight here, you take away the attention of this center, and you make this whole image looks less interesting or less grand. And also you can see the author, they don't use, if you are using this kind of lighting, let's say this is the focal element, you don't want to suddenly make this guy's shirt like yellow color or red color, because it will suddenly fight with this focal element. These two, if they fight with each other, your eyes will be like confused. Let's say if you add another green color shirt person here, so there are 3 elements fighting for your attention, and that's not good if you want to tell a strong story for your render. So always use one. And for lighting, if I want to know whether is it good, I will always ask this question to myself. So does this lighting match with the story that I want to tell? Let's say it's evening or afternoon. Let's say your building is sort of like maybe a market. You don't want to use afternoon scene because market is usually populated by people during evening. If you use afternoon scene, all the sun shining on the human will be very bright, and there aren't many details to see. because you can observe that most people, they use sort of like evening or scene when the sun is very low. So because when the sun is very low, you can create long shadows and soft shadows, so to make your scene looks more poetic. If you use a strong afternoon sun at the top of your camera, you won't have a lot of shadows and it doesn't make your building look good. So, yep. I'll share some of my work from last time. Actually, when I was this is my semester 3 work, my semester 3 render for my final project. Actually, to sum up, colors, lighting, and composition, I don't know all these 3 principles when I was in school. I only learned that when I graduated. So, but I think it's very useful because if I know what I'm doing, then I think I'll do a much better job when I'm presenting my building. So even though I don't know, but because I look at a lot of reference image of render when I do, so you can see this render. I use this human contrast with the white light as the focal element. And I also use this as the focal element because it's very bright. So as you can see, and then I also add this spotlight here and sort of like white light here. So as you can see, I don't really know how to compose an image well enough, but I did some things right, such as adding a human figure here. And then I use guiding lines. But the guiding lines, actually, it ends out of the frame. So let's say if you want to render something, if the guiding lines, it ends inside the frame, it will always look better if the guiding line ends outside of the frame. So for example, if I just tilt my camera a bit up more, so the whole scene will look something like maybe like this, like a courtyard. So it will look even more dramatic and nice. But I just want to show some of the mistakes that I've done so that you can learn. And also I use red and a bit of gray color because I'm not really good in colors last time. So I just use all these desaturated colors. And also I added details such as all these raindrops as the foreground element. I don't know what I was doing. I just like add because it looks nice, but actually it turns out to apply to the principles that I learned after that. And then this is one of my Sem 5 renders. As you can see, the whole thing is the focal element. But if you can observe this image, if I were to do it now compared to back then, because last time, same thing, I don't know about color theory, and I don't know about lighting and composition. So actually, I think I zoom in too much to this building. If I just zoom out a bit more and give this building a bigger frame, and then maybe the lighting, I use more contrast. As you can see, it's all very pastel color. The red is very desaturated, and then the blue is also quite desaturated. And then suddenly there's this yellow here and purple here, and the green here. So it's a lot of elements fighting for attention. But it's okay because we can all learn from our past mistakes. And also, if I were to do this now, I'll maybe make the whole scene smaller. So I zoom out more, and then I'll make this building more saturated and the lights inside more saturated so that the users can focus just on the building. And then the background won't take away too much attention. So this is what I will do. This is Sem 5 in view. And then the next one is Sem 6. So after that, Sem 6, actually, I still don't really know what I'm doing, but I do learn a bit of color theory. So in these scenes, I use all red color and then just a hint of green. So I have 2 subjects here. The main subject is this person praying, and then another subject is this light. So this is my only light source to light up the whole scene. And as you can see, the image is not very contrast also. So you feel like it's very flat because if you look at this color, it's actually gray. If you can see it on my computer, it's gray, it's not black. So if I were to do it again, I will dial up the black more, and then I will make this part even brighter so that you make this pop up more. And also, luckily I learned about color theory because if not, maybe I would have put maybe like a purple shirt guy here or like a green shirt guy. Then it will just destabilize the whole image. So this is what I will do. this is some of the works that I've done. And also what I've talked just now about composition, color, and lighting, there are actually a lot of other use cases also, not just for building rendering. You can apply it on your board, or you can apply it on things like graphics. So such as this, I find this interesting because if it's yellow, this yellow billboard, the background is blue, yellow contrasts with blue. So the sky is blue. If you put this billboard and on daytime, people's attention will be immediately drawn to this. That's why we are often drawn to the MACD logo when they are driving on the highway, because it's bright yellow. So this is one of the brightest color that we can be drawn into. And then after that, this designer, he used red to contrast with the yellow again. So you bring the user's attention to their product. And then, of course, all this plays a role too, but I won't go here because this is another whole different topic, all this composition. And so, yeah, this is how the designers use graphics, colors to implement in their graphics. And it also can be applicable to maybe things such as fashion or like K-pop, because if you notice, this artist is actually using like complementary colors. Sorry, I think it's triadic colors. I don't have the color wheel with me now, but if you look at the color wheel, you'll be like at the 4 sides. So it'll be something like this. So one side will be pink, then yellow, then blue, sort of things like this, or triadic, sorry. So it'll be like 3. Something like this. So this is how designers use color combination to make the image looks more aesthetically pleasing and also pop up. Imagine, let's say somebody decide to make this guy, maybe let's say wear something like, I don't know, green. Then same thing, you just make this whole, the attention will be on him. And I think maybe that's not what the team wants, the marketing or the designer team wants. So this is how people used to. And like one of the highest earning people in YouTube, they also use the same thing, color theory and composition. If you can look at this, it's all red, green, and blue. So these are like primary colors to attract people's attention. So yellow, blue, red, green. These are all color theory. And then yellow and blue, the opposing side of the colors in color view. And then if you can see, this guy, Mr. Beast, he's also using like rule of thirds. And this guy he's using symmetry here. And this one, he's using a bit of depth. Like let's say this money is the foreground, this kid is the midground, then all these are the background. And then yeah, so all this applies composition structures, and then the focal element is of course his face, and he also apply color harmony rules and also lighting. For lighting, I wouldn't say much because it's actually because he wants the people to focus just on his face because he's the main element. So I believe he used, when he shoot himself, the light is like behind him to make him to be the main subject or main focal element. Then another thing that we see recently is this Squid Game, this color view. We have this green cyanish, and then it's actually opposite of pink and also yellow. Actually, let me just show the color view so that it's easier to understand. Adobe color view. So this is what I'm talking about all the time. So monochromatic, if you can just choose any color, you sort of like choose the other colors for you according to the harmony theory that you apply. So you can use this for your board. And then also triad, and then complementary. So let's go to triad, and then we'll go to Squid Game. So let's say pink, and then this is pink. So you can see pink here. And then there's a green, which is the shirt of all the prisoners or players, and then there's yellow, which is the color of the money. So they don't use something off from the color harmony rules. So this is what I'm talking about. And then I'll share back my slide. So you can see yellow, pink, and also this green. It's applied everywhere. So this thing, I want to edit this thing because it sort of like composite of everything that I want to talk about. So this person, for this shot, they use color theory. So such as, sorry. Oh, yeah. Okay. Such as red, and then there's yellow, and then there's green. And this artist also use rule of thirds to composite this image. And there's also foreground element, midground element, and background element. And then for lighting wise, I wouldn't say much, but I think it presents the best lighting because you can see the door's face is under shadow and the players are actually bright. So, but our attention is drawn to the door first, but not too much to the door because the door is not too bright. And it also implies like a sort of like creepy feeling. And the players in the back, although they are blurred, but they are bright. So when you look at the door, you'll be also drawn to the players at the back. So this is how designers or artists or even architects apply all these theories into their perspective or boards or renders. And yeah, that's all from me. Thanks. I hope this helps.
Okay, thanks so much, Ling Rong, for sharing your techniques in rendering and presentation. Okay, I would like to ask probably before I give the floor to, the question to my colleagues and the students. Would you like to share some of your other works? Because I think I've seen a lot from your website, right? You have a website, Ling Rong.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Oh yeah, hold on. I'll open my school works first, and then I'll show some of the work that I've done recently so that we can compare where I've improved. So this one is actually my portfolio. We can go all the way back to semester 2. Okay, so in this case, I use a black and white board because I don't really know how to use colors. Because every time I use colors, it will look awful. So I use black and white mostly. And then after that, I sort of learn and improve in doing Sem3. So this is Sem3 project with my group of friends, which is one of my partner now, Ken Wong. I think he's inside the call. But this is what we did. So we are actually very interested in 3D render when we are in like semester 2, semester 3. Then we just learn online through YouTube, and we start to apply like colors and sort of like compositing rules to all this render. Like this is symmetry, and this is more towards maybe like a rule of thirds or like guiding lines, sort of rules, principles. And then after that, move on to Sem 4 and Sem 5. Sem 5, yeah. Sem 5, I've learned a bit more about the software, 3D Max software and Photoshop. So it's loading. Sorry. So, okay, this is sort of like a symmetry also. I use a lot of symmetry in this project because, I don't know, it gives a very calming effect. And the box also sort of like frame the key element, which is the human. I want to be the human, but I think the background temple is a bit too bright, which takes away the attention, but it doesn't matter because it works too. And this one, I use rule of thirds for the building, which is just a simple rule. And this one, I try to use sort of like this foreground element to create more depth. So although it looks a bit like fake, but that's what I did last time. And this is the focal element. So there's a foreground, and then there's this building midground, and then there's a background, like all these shop lots and sky. So this is under Fazwin's project. It's Fazwin. And after that, semester 6, same thing. I try to apply the theories too, but not really knowing what I'm doing. So as you can see, I place some subjects here, but I also place a moving human here without knowing why. So it's just all over the place, but it's all a learning process. So yeah. And this one we have seen just now. This one, I think I'm trying to use maybe like golden ratio or something. But you can see the colors, the humans are all wearing blue colors, which I think I remember I purposely turned all to blue. So that because some are wearing, because these are all public people, some are wearing like purple, some are wearing like pink. So I changed them all to blue so that it looks more harmonized. And then there's also this. This one, for this, I sort of use framing effect. So this new element is the foreground, and then this is the subject. And then after that, so yeah, this is some of the Sem 6 work. And this is sort of like the rule of thirds. The subject is in between the intersection point. And yeah, and then after that, after I graduated, I'm doing all this. I'll show you some of my recent works. So, okay, this one. For this is for competition. We are doing it for a competition. Okay. We are actually using a very strong foreground, and after that midground and background element. So the user's eye will be like, there's a lot of things to see in terms of all this, in terms of composition. And then in terms of color wise, I choose like monochromatic and then use this white to highlight the subject, and also this car in the rule of thirds. I actually use a lot of principles into one image. And then also I sort of place this building, instead of placing them like maybe same row, I choose to place it like near, then sort of like mid, and then far, so that when we look at the render, we will be first drawn by this human, and then this sort of line guides us throughout the whole render, and then it makes this image contains more story. So you can imagine like a child astronaut and the parent astronaut is going on a venture on Mars, something like that, using composition. And maybe this one too. This is the recent RTS project. For this, it's very simple. I'm using symmetry, but because the competition is about the train to Singapore, from JB to Singapore, so I place this bright light here as to draw the user's eye towards this train. And also I use this sort of like guiding lines, these wavy guiding lines, to guide the people's eyes to the end. And then the background, there's a background too. I show some of the background so that you can see like these small buildings, although it looks very small in the render, but actually all these small things, it adds a lot of depth to this whole scene. And then there's movement also, sort of things like that. And colors, of course. I always like clear all the colors of the pedestrians. So in this case, I just use blue sky, and yellow. I allow yellow and a bit of red. So I don't allow anything weird, like maybe pink or green or what. Then the last one, okay, this one. This is the recent project too. This is also very simple. The subject is actually, okay, the important thing that we want to sell in this design is of course the building, but sometimes we don't have to just show the whole building. We can show the experience within the building. So for this project, the experience within the building is when you walk in, when the sun rises up, you shine throughout this whole corridor, this whole portal. Because this competition, the project is called Langit. So in this case, we want to design a building that frames the sky, which is Langit. And Lang in Bahasa Iban also means door. So this is sort of like a door portal that frames the sky. So this is actually what we are trying to do. And the light, of course, this is the subject. And then it lights up the whole area. And you can see near this part and this part, I actually sort of like darken it so that if here there's some bright elements or here, it will fight with the attention of this middle part. So that's what I'm trying to create, just one single light source. And of course, all these humans are all the details that you can add. And then because it's also in Kuching, so I add this cat. It's just like a Easter egg. And all these human adds more story too. And also they all wearing the plain blue shirt. Nothing stand out, nothing purple, nothing red or sort of things like that. So yeah, this is how I apply what I learned throughout to my work. Yep, applies to design too. So yeah, that's all.
Okay, thanks so much, Ling Rong, for your sharing. Okay. I'm sure we have all learned a lot, okay, from this session. Any question from our students or from my colleague? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Anyone? Yeah.
Yeah, Prince.
Yeah, I Ed. Yeah.
Yeah, Ling Rong, thanks for your presentation and lovely. I think I learned a bit from you also. I'm into photography and all those rules and things that you mentioned. Yeah, it just reminds me of those days when we learned the photography lessons. Yeah, you mentioned about this. One of these is perspective distortions. Sometimes I find that certain perspective. Some of the artists purposely retain the sort of a perspective distortion because they wanted to enhance that dynamisms. So when do we use when do we correct the perspective distortion and when do we not correct? Sometimes when we look at the sort of images, especially when the camera angle is actually at a very low, like an ant's eye view, looking up, right? So they can't actually correct the distortion. They purposely make it as if like they want it to be distorted so that it looks more dynamic. So do you think that this sort of a corrections should be done, I mean, all the time, or should we not do it for the purpose of making more dynamic?
Actually, no. Let me show you an example very quickly. Sorry. Okay. Hold on. Let me share my screen. Okay, I'm in Photoshop now. I think this is what you are mentioning. The artist is an eye view, but okay, this we shouldn't apply the 2-point perspective rule to here because it's like this is a sort of like a different feeling that the photographer want to convey. So it's like all the lines are all actually meeting in the middle. So they want to guide the eye towards the middle. Actually, this works. Imagine if you make it all straight, then you won't be able to see this building or this building, and it will look very weird. So it doesn't apply here. So I think generally, if you want to apply 2-point perspective, right? Let's say this is the building. Let's say this is an elevation. If your building is short and you are looking from sort of like a human eye view, I think then you can apply. But if your building is, let's say, super tall, and you are looking up, I don't think it can be applied because you distort the building so much that it doesn't look like a building anymore. You can only apply when like sort of like a drone view, when you are in the middle, and then you can apply it so that the building looks straight. And also another thing that you shouldn't apply 2-point perspective is when you are looking down, your camera is pointing down. So I think it only applies to looking up a bit, or only like certain, like within maybe 0 to I think around maybe I would say 45 or 60. I think if anything beyond that, it will look super distorted. And if anything below, it will look weird too. If you are aerial view and you look down, any angle also it will look good. So yeah, this is what I think.
Okay, thank you, Ling Rong. Thank you.
Thanks, Ed. Yeah. Anyone? We have some, I think not a question, but a comment from Joey Kong. We are all very interested to know more about the process of rendering. So, but I think you're quite,
Process.
yeah.
It will be a super long, super detailed, super technical talk.
Okay.
But process, I will generally say, okay, let's say, what are the software that Synopsis is using now? The modeling software.
Guys, you can unmute,
SketchUp
unmute.
or
Yeah, I think some of them SketchUp,
Revit?
some of them Revit. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Never mind. I just assume it's SketchUp. What I do is I do everything there. 3D model. After that, I'll import into either if let's say I want a realistic render because of my job scope as a visualizer, I'll use 3D Max. And then after that, after 3D Max, in 3D Max, when I import it, first I will set all the materials because when you import, the materials are not there. So I will set maybe like, let's say mirror become mirror. And then after that, I will set like bricks become brick and sort of things like that. And also after that, I'll add light. If it's exterior, it's sunlight. If it's interior, then interior light. And then after that, I'll add all the details or necessary stuff such as trees, humans, egg. And then I will do a lot of testing, maybe like 10 to 20 rounds of just to try which lighting or which angle is the best. After that, I just click render. And then after that, I'll move to Photoshop to enhance the colors, enhance the contrast, and maybe use sort of like soft light technique to make the subject brighter. Yeah, that's for 3D Max and Photoshop. Lumion, same thing. If I use Lumion, I'll finish modeling in SketchUp, move to Lumion, apply material, and then play with the sun. In Lumion, it's very easy to play with the sun. And then after done the sun, materials, and all the settings, and then I'll export it to Photoshop to post-process too. Yeah, it's very simple.
Thanks, Ling Rong. Thanks, Joey, for the question. I think some comments you may read. I think Joey's asking for Instagram.
I don't have Instagram. I don't play. I got Facebook. I think this. I'm a boomer.
You can add the, you can read the other questions. I think that's not a question there. Can you hear me, Ling Rong?
Yeah, can.
Okay. Guys, you can unmute your microphone, show your faces and ask Ling Rong. Probably they want to ask any techniques and how long do you prepare? I mean, during your Sem 6, okay, when do you stop designing and when do you start production?
Oh, Sem 6. I remember for Sem 6, I think I stopped designing 1 month before the submission date. I mean, there's still some minor changes, but everything is all there. So I just take the 1 month to prepare for the final renders, the boards, and the model. Yeah, I think rendering that time, because I'm not that good in render yet during Sem 6. So I take around maybe like 2 to 3 days to produce just one scene. That's the timeline. I think a student should have 1 to 2 days. But I mean, because I place emphasis on presentation, so that's what I did.
Any other tips for the Sem 6 students? They're currently on week 10 now, so there's about 4 to 5 weeks to go before the final review, or 5 weeks to go. Any probably top three advice for them? Yeah.
Actually, I don't have any advice, but I just want to emphasize that. I just want to emphasize that rendering is not. It's just one of the many ways to present your design. So this talk, hopefully, it just teach you more about like principles and colors, things like that. In terms of rendering, I think students don't have to produce renders for their design work. They can use maybe plans or super nice, super big sections to present their design. Renders is just one of the many presentation style that I prefer.
Okay. Joey's asking, is there a place wherein you can get the good, I think, human figures, vegetation, and yeah. I think you shared before, Ling Rong, right? I remember you shared with your classmates, right?
Yeah. I shared. I think I have it in my website. I'll send the link here. But it's all very old. How is it? It's like 5 years ago, 4 years ago. 4 years ago, yeah. I just get it mostly from Google Image. Yeah.
Okay. So your request, Joey, is granted. Okay. Okay, my colleagues, any question? Aswin? Bang?
No questions, just very well done to you, Ling Rong. I think I remember Ling Rong from Studio 5 has always been self-motivated. So I think that's one of the qualities, I think, that, to be self-motivated, to be always, I remember he's always asking himself questions.
Yeah. That's true.
Yeah, Ling Rong, yeah.
Okay, Bang, Manin, Caleb, Eric. Everyone is so quiet today. Any final? Oh, Mr. Liu, you're a former student. You have anything for Ling Rong? Your Sem 6 guru, your tutor.
I have something to say to Ling Rong.
Okay. Then.
Mr. Liu, go ahead. What's Mr. Liu?
I was just going to say, I mean, I didn't really have very much because Ling Rong, I had him for 8 semesters ago, so it's a long time. But Ling Rong was very independent. He knew what he wanted, So there's not much for me to input because he had a conceptualization of the final product in his mind. So yeah, we worked together and he worked himself. So I would like to see this kind of independence from. I mean, not everywhere. I mean, there were two good students there in the group. There were the other student that was good as well was Shirley. Shirley Tang was very good as well, but Ling Rong was miles ahead of his rendering, So I think as a student, I think it's an opportunity for you to pick up skills along the way, and hopefully it can be commercialized. Hopefully it will benefit you, all of you. Yeah. So that's all I have to say. So welcome back, Ling Rong. Thanks for sharing your stuff. So it can be beneficial to the students here. Thank you. Thanks, Prince. Thank you.
Thanks, Liu. Bang.
Thanks, Mr. Liu.
Yeah, I just want to thank Ling Rong for being always around and helpful. Ling Rong was helping out my students for past few semesters as well. I actually asked Ling Rong's permission for my students to contact him to get advice on presentation techniques. And he's very kind, more than willing to help always. Thank you very much, Ling Rong.
No problem. Welcome.
And
thanks for inviting
also, yeah, very proud of what you have done, what you have achieved, what you're doing, and all your words are really amazing. I wish you all the best, and I hope your practice or your so-called ethics studio will become bigger and even better. But you are so far by far the best renderers I've met. Yeah.
Oh no, there are a lot of better people out there, like millions.
Thank you. It's the way you render, I think, with a lot of feelings, with a lot of emotions, and those are the elements that are very hard to be incorporated in any renderings. Renderings tend to be robotic, very digital, and lacks human touch. I think it's a human touch that you are able to incorporate, and that is a very special skill you have, very special talent. Yeah. Good job. Thank you again.
Very poetic, Bang, right?
Yes.
Okay. I think Wicked has something to say. He switched on his audio. It's okay, Wicked. We can hear you even if you're covered.
No. Well, the only thing is that what impressed me with Ling Rong is that he knows what he wants and not following the trend of everyone just moving on to masters blindly. Perhaps he can share. Can you share a little bit on? So if a student wanted to venture into what you're doing, which is very impressive, yeah, what sort of things that they should equip themselves? Yeah, of course, this will build your more competitors for you, but yeah, what does it take to do what you want? Because I always encourage students to explore beyond just, you know, architecture trainings. Does have a lot of different fields that can venture into in the future. So if they want to do visualization, okay, what sort of things that they need to look forward to? What are the ups and downs being where you are doing all these lovely works that you're doing? And then, yeah, is it very competitive? All right, thank you.
That's a very wide and broad question. First of all, I would say I think it's interest, because since I would say maybe semester 1 or what, I have been very interested in softwares, architecture softwares. So I keep looking into YouTube for all these tutorials. And then even when semester 1, semester 2, we are all prohibited from using digital softwares to present our work. Actually, to confess, I actually use digital things to produce my board, and then after that I trace over it. Yeah, that's what I did last time. But okay, now everyone knows. But anyway, so yeah, that's I think it starts from interest, and then after that, just I think also maybe curiosity. Want to learn about why would people do this. Then I'm also interested about like movies, like why do they use this kind of color? Why would they portray this kind of composition? Or why would they take this shot? Yeah, and then after that, after graduated, me and my friend Ken Wong, I think we sort of like have the same vision, and we want to, because we think like, okay, so we are just 21. Maybe let's try to do some of the things that are interesting, such as getting rendering jobs. Then maybe we can do bigger things. So instead of going into part 1 or studying masters, but since we stepped into that and we began looking for clients that we can apply our skills to, there's no, we couldn't stop since that time. So yeah, and one of the things, ups and downs, regarding ups and downs, I think maybe I'll say the hardest thing is actually if we are doing our own thing, such as if I'm not working for somebody, I'm working for myself, I think it will be self-discipline, because you are doing your own thing, so you have to like force yourself to wake up early, and then force yourself to look for people, look for jobs, and also expand your own network so that you can grow this business and make this sustainable. Yeah.
Thank you. Yes. So how's being boss? how's being boss
No,
compared to your friend?
I'm not a boss actually. I'm just a worker. But I got a lot of boss.
Oh, okay.
Designers are my boss. Yeah.
Yes. Thank you, Ling Rong, for the sharing.
So I think some of my colleagues can get Ling Rong if you have a project. Ling Rong is available, right? Okay. Yes,
Sorry, please. I have one
Yes,
more
Meg.
question. I have one
Yeah,
more
sure, sure.
Okay, so Ling Rong, back to what I mentioned before, like you have this ability to incorporate emotion and like great poetics into your renders. What would be your advice to the students? How do they do it? How do you do it? How like to incorporate this sort of thing? What goes across, your what's the thinking process and what is the method that they can use?
I think I draw inspirations from a lot of maybe reference like movies or photography or like, I don't know, nature, and just see what people do and then just apply it to the render. And also a lot of testing. I like to test, so I just keep on trying and see which produce the best feeling. So yeah, just try and error and get inspiration from everywhere. Yeah.
And a lot of observation of daily life.
Yeah, observation of the site. If you are designing, observation of the daily life of the people there.
Okay.
Yeah, but
Because
I would say most
Ling
of
Rong,
it is.
I think I remember before
Sorry.
I became a tutor, I was doing a crit in Taylor's as a guest, and I saw your work somewhere in Chinatown, and you have this render that gave me goosebumps. You rendered your design from across the road, and it was raining, and this person dashing across the rain.
Oh yeah, you have to have like, I like to create stories too, because I like to read. I like to read into stories like, I'll say like movies or anime or like comics, things like that. So I have a lot of like imagination in my head. Like I like stories. I like to create. Like I like to play games also. So when I'm doing a render, it's sort of like creating a story in my own mind. So that time I'm imagining, like, let's say I'm imagining when this building is built, how will it look when it's raining? Because I think when I'm going there, it's raining too at the site. So I took inspiration from there, and then like a lot of people running to seek shelter. And because the building is open at the ground floor, so I thought, okay, why not have this story of this guy running towards the building to take a shelter. And then all these warm lights from the building, it radiates out to shine the dark alley behind. So it's just creating a mini story.
I think it was amazing. I still remember the reflection on the puddle of water on the road, the rain that comes at an angle, almost telling a story that is windy because the rain is not straight. It was like at an angle. Reflection on the puddle, and I think an old uncle on this side of the yeah. So I like that. So I think what you're trying to tell the students also, think of a story in their render. So not just a dry render of their building.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Always like includes the activity. Activity in the site. Yeah.
Ling Rong, I just want to say something. Thanks, Tay. Thanks for that. I just want to say something. It's just a statement. I think maybe Ling Rong have a few takes on this, your take on this, but I've been practicing not at the same standard as your renders, but what I'm trying to say as a statement, I think it applies to all students. I mean, you have a tool in your hand, but you must know what works for you. That means you must know what material works for you. How do you get emotion from this material that you put as a template for your building? You know, you must create that kind of mood, and that comes with trial and error. That's what I'm trying to say. Nobody is going to teach you. you're going to experiment until you get something you want, So the tool is there, but the tool can do many things. It's up to you, how you handle it. I think today, what's very useful for me was your Adobe color wheel, the Tridic, the what you call it, the Tridic, complementary, yes, complementary. I think that's very useful too, because most of us guys, most of us architects, all our building is black and white, because we want to stay safe, because we're not good at colors. So this Tridic, this complementary color wheel that you have in this Adobe color is very useful, because I think colors are one thing. When you want to get the right hue, is very subjective. It's very hard to mix. So what you have there is perfect proportion for the right hue. Is it the right hue that we desire? So I think good. Thanks, Ling Rong. What are you going to say for this, Ling Rong? Any comments?
No, I think you're right. There's there are a lot of trials and errors involved, and a lot of self curiosity and observation involved. So for me, I just took inspiration from the site, all the activities. I just try to see if this fits, and if this is more poetic, if this is nicer. And then once I found a good one, and then I just try to make it nice. And the details are all later. I mean, like Miss Tay say, the reflections, all the rain. It's like you just try to think when you're doing rain, or is it straight down, or is it sideways? And then when it's reflection, how it look like. So just go into the details, sort of things like that.
We have some question, I think final two question, Ling Rong from Faber. How do you incorporate VR into visualization? What software do you use? And what is the process like in brief, in short?
For Faber.
Faber's question.
How do I incorporate VR into visualization? VR is actually the same process. It's just that the camera can see 360. So when you click render, once you set everything up, it will just render the whole thing. That's all. I think Lumion, there's a function for that too. So actually Steel and VR is very different. For VR, for Steel, you can use the rules of compositing. You can use like good lighting, but for VR, it takes much more than that. So you need to composite instead of in 2D space. Just look at rule of thirds and guiding lines, framing, things like that. In VR, you need to look at the whole design. And for Ayesha, on average, how long does one render take? How long does one render take? If you say like in terms of setting up the whole thing until you click render, until you finish, until Photoshop, actually I think it's sort of like a trainable skill. Last time I used to take, maybe in semester 3, I used to take 3, 4, 5 days for just one. But now, because we are so used to it, we can do it like maybe within 1 day. So, but in terms of rendering wise, if you just say the render process, like after you set up everything and then you click render, it depends on your computer spec. So if your computer is powerful, it can be done within like maybe 10 minutes. If your computer is slower, then, or the scene is more complicated, then it will take maybe around 1 to 5 hours. Yeah.
Okay. I think that is the final question. Okay. I think once again, on behalf of your alma mater, Ling Rong, we would like to congratulate you on what you have achieved. So probably more achievements in the future for you. We wish you all the luck. And I think it's good to see someone who have accomplished and stays so still humble. Okay, and likewise, you're always open to sharing what you have learned, your knowledge to everyone. Okay, that's I think that's one good trait that will make you hurdle all your obstacles in the future. Okay, and we're all proud of you. I mean, I think Miss Tay is also crying now. Okay, I'm just kidding. A bit emotional, okay. But we're all proud of you, and we look forward also to our current students and the newly graduate. Hopefully, we can invite them as we have invited you for today's event. Okay, okay. I think before we end, again, thank you for sharing. Before we end, I think Jessie is here. Okay, hi Jessie, our class rep. Probably we can pause for a few minutes to take a group photo with our guest speaker for today.
Okay, everybody turn on your camera. I'll give another 10 seconds. 10, 9.
Eric is still switching on. Yeah. Caleb, okay. Guys, please switch on your cameras.
I think I'll just take the print screen now.
Okay, thanks, Jessie.
1, 2, 3. Let's. Okay. Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Okay, thanks so much, Jessie. Again, once again, thanks, Ling Rong. All the best. Okay,
Thank you, Mr. Prince, for inviting.
thank you. We hope to see you again for the workshop. Okay, probably next year. Okay.
Okay, next year.
Okay.
Okay.
Thanks, everyone. Okay, let's take a 10 minutes rest before you join your respective tutorial groups. Okay, thanks, Ling Rong. Okay, stay safe. Thanks,
Ling Rong.
everyone.
Stay safe. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.